Hello everyone, my name is Eric Leichtenschlag from the Mobile Ads SDK Developer Relations team here at Google. I'm here today to talk to you about native ads in mobile applications. The first question you might be asking yourself is, what does native mean? In the context of your mobile application, native means you get to decide how the creative is presented to the user. If you take the example of the Google Plus app on the right-hand side, you can see that this native ad looks just like another Google Plus post. As the publisher, you get to decide how this ad is rendered in such a way that it fits the style of your application. Traditionally, the advertiser controlled both the creative as well as the presentation of that creative. And so when your app would just get back some HTML that looked like what the advertiser had planned that ad to look like. In the context of native, the advertiser still provides the assets of the creative, but the publisher defines the presentation. The publisher might have multiple presentations for the same creative, and it's kind of a many-to-many relationship. In this session, we're going to discuss native ads rendering in the client-side application. We actually have a current private beta for this. I'm going to walk through a minimal example showing the minimal amount of code you'll need to get up and running with native, as well as a practical example showing how this could be used in a real-life application. Finally, we'll discuss the native ads roadmap to tell you about where we're headed. So the first topic I'm going to talk about is the native rendering in apps. So there's two formats that we currently offer. The first one being the AppInstallAd format. This is for your standard AppInstallAd, and the assets that you will get back in your application include a headline, body, call to action like the install button, and this will come in the form of text, and you can style that however you'd like. You get the star rating, the price, the store it came from, as well as an application icon and image for that app that's going to be potentially installed. The attribution and icon and text are two separate fields that represent attribution for the ad. This will be available, or these fields will not be null in the case of backfill if you're not directly reserving these ads for yourself. And if you're using backfill for this, then these attributes will come back and you're required to display them. As an example, here's the attribution and icon text being displayed in the top right corner. This is actually the required placement for the attribution icon and text if it's not null. But if you are doing reservation, these fields won't be there, and you can lay out the rest of the ad however you'd like. So once again, this is what the AppInstallAd looks like, and we've already talked about what it looks like in the context of a Google Plus application. The other type of format that we offer is the ContentAd format. It is similar to the AppInstallAd format, although it's more just for generic content. You still have your headline, your body, your call to action, which is what the user might press to actually click through the ad. You'll also get the advertiser, some advertiser text and logo to talk about who the advertiser actually is. Of course, you'll get your image, as is the same with any content ad. And if the attribution icon text is available, again, if this is from Backfill, it'll be there and you'll have to present it in the top right corner. So if we look at what this might look like in practice, if you have a listings app, you can put this content ad directly in it and present or style this ad the same as you would your other listings, and it actually looks like it fits in. You might notice that this ad has a light gray background instead of white. As part of policy, we do require that the background of the ad be a slightly different color, just so to not trick the user that they're clicking on an ad, but to actually make it obvious that it's an advertisement. Some people might also want to display like advertisement like right on the top of the ad, again, just to avoid confusion for your users. Let's talk about trafficking native ads. If you're in DFP and you want to traffic reservations that won't have the attribution on them, here's how we can actually do it. So I'm going to hop over to the DFP UI, and when you're creating a new ad unit, the same as you've done before if you've used DFP, on the sizes tab, instead of specifying a specific size like 320 by 50, we've actually added a new native size. So when you set up your ad units, you'll create a native size for this. Similarly, on your line item, when you set it up, the inventory size is going to be native again, and you'll want to you want to target ad units of the native size to a line item like this. When we're talking about making creatives for native, there's a new creative type at the bottom. It's called native. And if I were to click in, I could create an app install ad or a content ad. If I were to click the app install ad, it would open up this page that I have here on the right. And this allows you the opportunity to specify all of the individual native assets that your app will be passed. And your app is going to be responsible for actually presenting this ad in however it chooses. So you'll still get your headline, your image, your body, all of the rest of the app install ad assets we talked about. You'll also be able to specify a deep link click action URL, which is prioritized over the fallback click action URL. Your deep link click action might be something like market:// if you're going to the App Store, or if it's a content ad, you might want to deep link into your own app or somewhere else, and you'd specify a custom URL. And if the OS can't, for some reason, process that custom URL because no apps can handle it, it'll revert to the fallback action URL, the fallback click action URL. So this field is required just in case the deep link doesn't resolve for some reason. So this is how you will traffic native ads in DFP. And let's talk about how to actually get these native ads in the Mobile Ads SDK using the Native Ads Addon Jar. So I'm going to walk through a minimal example to show you what this will look like, what we're going to try to achieve with our basic, very minimal code app. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making two requests, and one is going to be for an app install ad and one is going to be for a content ad. And then I'm just going to display a few of those assets onto the screen inside of a scroll view. So here we have the first one happens to be an app install ad, and we displayed the headline or the title of the app icon, and the app image. And for the content ad, which came back second, we displayed the headline, the body, and the image. In this sample app, we're also going to make the image clickable. So if I were to actually click on the image, it'll bring us to the click-through URL, which in this case I specified google.com as a click-through URL. So this is going to be the minimal sample app that we're going to build. So how are we going to get there? Well, our native ad API introduces this new concept called an ad loader. If you've used our Mobile Ads SDK before, you might have seen ad view or interstitial ad as the objects that you work with. And those formats, when you're working with an ad view, you're kind of locked into using banners. When you're using interstitial ad, you're specifically requesting an interstitial. The ad loader is capable of handling any type of ad. You just have to kind of tell it what types of ads it can load, and you'll have to be responsible for implementing the callbacks for each of them. So we have this ad loader container, and in the case of native, we have app install and content ads. And so we might create an ad loader that just supports app install ads. We might create one that just supports content ads, or we can create one that actually supports both. In the case where it supports both, you'll have to set callbacks for what happens if you get back an app install ad and what happens if you get back a content ad. And then no matter which one is returned with that individual request, your app will be able to handle it. So with the concept of the ad loader in mind, let's actually go and create this minimal application. To prove to you it's a minimal application, I'm actually going to create an entire new project from scratch. So I don't have Android Studio open, so I'm actually going to do that now. So I'm going to open up Android Studio, and I'm going to create a new application. It's going to start a new Android project. I'm going to call it Hello Native Ads. And just going to keep going. Click Next. We're going to support API 9. We're just going to create a blank activity. We're going to create the default names for our activity and our layout files. And I'm going to go ahead and let it create this project for us. So once this project is created, the first thing we're going to need to do is pull in the native Addon Jar that we have. So this AdLoader API is currently living inside of a private jar. It's not actually part of Google Play Services yet. So we're going to have to import a separate jar to do this. So in my project section, in my app libs folder, I'm actually going to go ahead and just pull in the native Addon Jar which we'll make available when you kind of get enabled for the Native Ads private beta. We'll give you this jar. And so I'm going to put this jar in my libs folder so that we can reference it later. What we'll also have to do, as with any application that uses the Mobile Ads SDK, we're also going to have to, in our Gradle file, say that we're actually going to compile in the Google Play Services SDK. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So the dependency we're going to use is com.google.android.gms.playservicesads 6.5 plus. And if you've downloaded the Google repository from the SDK manager, you'll be able to have access to this resource and compile this in. We're also going to need a Gradle sync so that Android Studio actually pulls in this library. What we'll also have to do, as with any application that uses Mobile Ads SDK, is go into our Android manifest and specify a few things in here. So the first is going to be the permissions. We are going to need to specify which permissions we need, and the Mobile Ads SDK requires Internet and Access Network State. As with any Google Play Services app, we're also going to have to include the metadata tag noted here, which has the manifest tell Google Play Services which version it's actually referencing in the client application. The final thing we'll need to do is actually include the add activity. So Android requires that you specify every activity that your app is going to go into in the manifest, so it knows what to load. And when ads are clicked, we actually go through our add activity to do the click-through. And so that's why we need the add activity class in the manifest definition. So these are the 3 updates we have to make to our manifest. The next thing I'm going to do is go into our resources file, and normally Android starts you off with just a small app that says Hello World. What we're going to do instead is we're going to replace this with the scroll view I was talking about. So to refresh your memory, the Hello Native Ads app had a scroll view that just popped in the native assets as they came in. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this text view with the scroll view. So this scroll view, all it's going to have is a single linear layout. This linear layout has an ID of native assets container, and in our code we're going to pull out that native assets container, and that's what we're going to use to pop in our native assets when they come back. So that's our XML file. I'm now going to go into the main activity in the Java file. The first thing I'm going to do is add in some constants, and so these constants are going to be the actual ad units we're using to make ad requests to. I have, in DFP, I have a native line item set up to go to /6499/example/native. This ad unit will actually return both content ads and AppInstallAds, but in this example, we're only going to use it for the content ads. AdMob currently supports AppInstallAds, and so I'm going to use this AdMob native ad unit to go get AppInstallAds. So these are my constants. In my onCreate method, the first thing I want to do is actually pull out that native assets container we talked about, that linear layout, and that's where we're going to store all of our, we're going to pop all of our assets into there once they come back. So at this point, we have our native assets container, and this is what we're going to use to throw in the assets. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you the AdLoader code. And the AdLoader code ATEX seems to not be working for me right now, so I'm just going to put it in manually. The AdLoader code, it's a lot of code, but don't worry, I'm going to explain all of it. So remember, the AdLoader object is capable of handling every type of native ad, and you just have to tell it which one to use. So in this case, we are creating an ad loader. We're giving it the name AppInstallAdLoader because we only plan to have it support app install ads. The ad loader is created through an AdLoader.builder object. It takes a context, so we're passing in the current activity. It asks you for what ad unit you are going to be making ad requests with. So in this case, we're doing the AdMob ad unit, and we're going to load app install ads. And the way we're going to do that is our builder is going to say, I'm supporting app install ads with the for app install ad method. And to support app install ads, we need a single callback that implements what happens when the app install ad comes back. And so that's the native app install ad dot on app install ad loaded listener. It has the single callback on app install loaded, and in here is where we're actually going to, in a minute, add some native assets to our container. But to keep the code simple right now, I haven't done anything yet when the ad comes back. Also, this next piece is optional, but we're also setting an ad listener that tells us when the ad failed to load. So if for some reason the ad didn't load, we're going to toast a message saying app install ad failed to load, and the error code as the reason. So this will just kind of help us for debugging purposes in case this request fails. Once that's all done, we build the ad loader, and that gives us the ad loader object. And once that's done, the only thing we need to do is actually load an ad into that ad loader. And that's done using the load ad method and passing in an ad request. And this creating an ad request via this builder is similar to any of you who've kind of used the Mobile Ads SDK in the past. So now I'm going to go inside the on app install ad loaded callback, and inside the on app install ad loaded callback, what we're going to do is, again, it looks like a lot of code, but it's really not that bad, I promise. Once again, we're just going to, for some debugging, we're going to tell ourselves that the app install ad actually did load. And we're just going to create some new views for these native assets.getBack and put them into our assets container. So I'm going to create a text view, which represents the headline. And I'm just going to call setText on it with the app install ads headline. Note that in the on app install ad loaded method, we get back the app install ad object, and this is what contains all of the actual assets. So app install ad.getHeadline just gives us the headline. So we're going to put that into a text view and just add that to our native assets container. We're going to do the same thing for the app icon, which is an image view. We're going to set the image drawable to the app install ads icon, which is just a drawable. And we're going to add that to the container. And we're also going to do the same for the image in the app install ad, and that's all of this code. The last thing we're doing here, or the second to last thing I should say, is we're setting a click listener on the image, and when the image is clicked, this is how we actually perform the click and go to www.google.com in the example I showed you before. The app install ad has this perform click method. It takes an asset ID, so we know which asset was clicked. So in this case, native app install ad has a constant for asset image, and so we're telling the SDK that the asset image was clicked, and you should kind of perform the click and go to that click-through URL that I specified in DFP. So that's the click listener, and then the very last thing is, now that we are actually putting that native ad in our app somewhere, we will call AppInstallAd.recordImpression. In this case, because I displayed that native image right away, or the native ad right away, I'm calling record impression directly in this callback. In practice, you might want to create kind of a private variable on your class for the app install ad. Just store it as soon as you get this callback, and then maybe later on down the road, when you actually want to use the native ad, you can do all this work to put it into your app somehow, and you can call record impression later. It's not required to be called immediately once you get this callback. So it depends on your implementation. So this is what'll get us the app install ad. Now what I'm going to do is the exact same thing except for the content ad. So this is going to look very similar. We still have our ad loader. It's going to be a new builder. This time we're using the DFP ad unit. The only difference here is we're saying this one supports content ads. So in this case, we're passing a native content ad dot on content ad loaded listener, very similar. and we implement the same single method when a content ad loads. Down below, we're doing the same thing in case the content ad fails to load, and then we're loading an ad with that new ad request. So once again, if I were to implement the callback for this, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to toast the fact that we got the content ad, and then we're going to create headline, body, and image views for those three assets. We're going to make the image asset, we're going to set a click listener on it. The click listener is going to actually call the perform click method. And then finally, we're going to record the impression on that content ad. So those are the only things we're doing with these two ad loaders. And I'm going to run this app and show you what it looks like. So in this example, I've created two ad loaders, and they both only supported a single ad type. This ad loader only supported for content ad. The other one supported just for AppInstallAd. In practice, you might want to put both of those ad types in the same request. Maybe you don't care what type of ad you got back. In that case, you can actually, like, you have for AppInstallAd here. So now our app's actually loading up. You have for AppInstallAd up at the top here. And you can just keep going with this builder and also say .for content ad and go and do your thing. And that's how you could actually support both at the same time. So I guess you'll have to trust me that this actually loaded, but it's doing the exact same thing as what the demo I had showed you before. And if we click through our images, we actually go through to the click-through URL. I'm not going to click the Amazon one because since I'm running on a simulator, I don't have the Google Play Store, and so this click-through might actually fail. But it does actually try to do something. So this is our minimal example. So just to recap, what we're doing here is creating an ad loader using our builder method, passing in our context, which in this case was this, to represent the activity, as well as an ad unit ID. We're specifying that it's for app install ads, and so we passed a listener that can handle that and to render the ad, and then we build the ad loader. Inside of the on app install ad loaded callback, we actually do the rendering, creating the text views and image views is what we did. We set a click listener, in this case, on the image view to actually perform a click. And then finally at the bottom, we record an impression on the ad so that those stats actually show up in the front end. So that's it for kind of the minimal example, but in practice, you won't just be throwing assets up onto the screen. You'll actually have to do a more complex layout and actually make it fit into your app. So now we're going to walk through a practical example of what this might look like in the context of a real app. So I also have a demo for this to motivate what we're actually going to try to do, and that's going to be our native ads example. So in our native ads example, we're going to start with kind of these listings on the top, like these first three and all these generic ones. And what's actually happening is an ad has loaded into the third index, if we're counting from 0, so 0, 1, 2. We've loaded a content ad into the third index, and this actually looks very similar to the rest of our listings, although in this case we do specify that it's an advertisement up top. And if we were actually to click through this guy, I think we set get a quote to actually go do something. That'll go through the click-through URL. And if we scroll down farther, on index position 8, I believe, we set an app install ad. And so here's here's an app install ad. And then even farther below, we got another app install ad, and this one's actually from AdMob. This top one's coming from DFP, so there's no attribution on the top. But the app install ad does have the attribution, and so that's shown. And the attribution actually clicks through, and you will be able to see kind of the About Google Ads page. So this is how the attribution works. And so in our listings app, we can actually throw in native ads that fit to the content. In this case, of course, the content ad looks a little bit more like a listing, but you're free to change this layout to make it look more like your typical listing. So this is what we're going to try to create, and I'm actually going to take this app off the device just to prove that we start with a clean slate, and we're going to recreate this project. I do have kind of a starter project for what this looks like without the ads, and then we're going to put ads into it. So I'm going to load up this Native Ads app and have this guy load up to show you what we're starting with. And while I do that, I'm also going to go back to the slides and kind of motivate, how this app is laid out, so it'll make more sense what we're trying to change. So I'm just going to wait just a second or two here for Android Studio to compile this and let me put it on the emulator. So what we're going to start out with is just the listings here with no ads, and so we're gonna add put ads into this. So before we do that, let me kind of go back and tell you how this app kind of works a little bit, so it kind of makes more sense when we go into specific files. So the design of this app is, the whole app's based on a list view, and a lot of the work is done in the adapter for that list view. At the beginning, there's only listing type objects, and those listing objects know how to populate themselves in the list. What we're going to do is we're going to add two new objects to this adapter. We're going to add AppInstallAdLoader objects and ContentAdLoader objects. And these objects, know how to load app install ads and content ads respectively. So there's going to be three types of objects in our adapter, and depending on the type we get back, we're going to load, we're going to put a different type of view in there depending on what type of object's being requested. We also have a view holder type for each object. In Android, view holders for performance improvement, what view holders do is when we're getting a view, we try to find all the individual subviews inside of like the main item that we're trying to populate, and we store all those subviews. We keep a reference to that in code and memory, so that when these objects are recycled, we don't have to keep pulling them out every time. So these view holder objects can be created given the super view, which pulls out all of the individual subviews that will be populated. And then once we get back an app install ad or a content ad, these view holder objects are going to have this method called populateListItem. And given an app install ad, this view holder knows exactly which app install ad asset to put into this specific view, and that's how our view actually gets populated. So with that in mind, let's go back to our app. So the first thing we need to do is actually specify indices for these ads. If I go into our main activity, you'll see that we have this to-do to put ads in at our preferred locations. So right now, if I scroll up a little bit, I can try to find where the main activity actually does setting the adapter. So the main adapter here, when it's created, specifies the array that it's based on is this get row items with ads method. And so if I go and get row items with ads, we're actually going to go get the row items, which is all of the items you see, but we actually have to put ads into this list so that ads get populated. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to put row items, update row items with certain positions. So I'm just in this example, I'm hard coding positions 3, 8, and 13. And in position 3, I'm going to put a content ad in using the native ContentAdLoader. So this is like one of the types that I'm putting into my adapter. And this ContentAdLoader is going to load a DFP ad. At slot 8, I'm going to load an app install ad from DFP. And at slot 13, I'm going to load an app install ad from AdMob. So if I were to run this again, now that we have these row items in here, when the list view goes to populate each index, it's going to, it's going to have 3 and 13 are now going to be indices for the specific ads. But we do actually have to render those native views. So you see kind of these placeholders here, and the reason you see these placeholders is because in our actual adapter, I kind of already have done some of the plumbing here. So the getView method inside of your adapter is where I guess all the magic happens to lay out a specific view. So if the view is of just a regular listing type, so this item is just a listing, then we're actually getting the listing view and populating it with just a regular listing item. And so that's what's happening on this line. So the listing view holder knows how to populate a list item, and that's kind of done immediately. If the type is a native ContentAdLoader or it's a native AppInstallAdLoader, instead of populating everything, right now we're just creating a text view, setting it as placeholder, and populating that instead. So this is showing you that we have something here, but we actually have to change this to support actual content and app install ads. So let's go and do this for our content ads. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually remove the placeholder stuff, because we actually want to return our actual views. And this should be our content ad layout. And load a content ad. So we're actually we're gonna do that first. We're gonna load a content ad first, and similar to what we did for the listing, we're gonna try to see if that convert view can be used. And so this is if we're scrolling through this list and we keep coming back to these list items, instead of Android having to re-render these views, it might have a recycled view that we had previously seen, and so we're trying to grab that recycled view. And so we're seeing if that content ad layout is null. If it is, we're going to have to use the layout inflator to create a new one. Otherwise, we have one already. And we're gonna try to get if we have to create a new one or not, that's fine. But once we do, we're going to get that item, and it's going to be a native content ad loader. And it's going to be a native content ad loader because that is the type we passed into the adapter from our main activity. And our native content ad loader knows how to load an ad. And so it's going to load an ad, and we're actually going to pass it the view holder object so that it knows what to populate with later. So this native content ad loader, I'm going to take you to that class now, and its load ad method. If we had previously loaded an ad when we scroll through, we already have track of that object, and we're just going to populate the list item again. And we're doing that so that if once ads come back, every time we kind of scroll through and scroll back, we're not loading ads every time. We're reusing them if they're available. But we haven't actually loaded and populated the content ad yet. So let's do that. This will be very similar to the code you've seen before. We're creating an ad loader using the builder. We're specifying it's for content ads. And in our content ad loaded callback, this is where we're actually saving the content ad as a private field, so that the next time, instead of actually loading an ad, we're going to just check if it's null, and if it's not, because we've loaded it previously, we can just simply populate it without having to make a new request. But assuming it's the first time we came in, we actually do have to load an ad. We actually have to go through the builder and load the ad. But once the ad does first load, we're going to save that content ad so that we don't have to load an ad the next time. And then we're going to do the same thing and populate the list item with the content ad holder as well as this content ad object. And we are recording an impression the first time we populate it, but we don't have to record impression every single time they scroll through. App install ad is showing, in between position 6 and 7. We don't have to record an impression every time we go through here. You only actually want to record it once. So we're recording it a single time in the onContentAdLoaded callback, but we're not, recording an impression if we're just populating it again and reusing it. So that's all we have to do to load the content ad. So what I'm going to do is the exact same thing for the app install ad. I'm going to remove that placeholder for the app install ad, and I'm going to go in here and tell the adapter to try to grab a previous app install ad layout if it had one. If not, we'll inflate the view, and then we'll take our native app install ad loader, which is our item that we passed in, and we will call load ad on that. And once again, in our native app install ad loader, we actually have to do the loading, and when we do the loading, it'll look again similar to what we've seen before. The ad loader is going to be using the builder. It's saying that it's for an app install ad, and in our single on app install ad loaded callback, we're saving the app install ad so that we can again repopulate it later without having to make new requests. And once the ad comes back the first time, we do populate it and record an impression. So it's the exact same code as what we've seen for our content ads that we just ran through. So let me run this app, and what we'll see is, assuming this all works, is instead of those placeholders, we'll actually see ads being loaded. So you'll see that the content ad loads into position 3, and the app install ad is going to load from DFP in position 7, and finally the app install ad is loading from AdMob, and in this case an Amazon ad came back. Okay, so one of the things I kind of glossed over in this example is how the actual presentation of this view is being done. So I'm actually going to show you a little bit of what that looks like. So this is kind of where you could spend a long time figuring out exactly how to lay this out, but in this case, this is all defined in my XML files here. And so these names, item AppInstallAd.xml, let me quickly show you where they're actually being referenced. If we go back into our listing adapter, the first time we actually have to create our layout, when we use the layout inflator, we're actually inflating this layout with a specific layout file. And so r.item.layout, r.layout.item AppInstallAd is saying we're actually inflating this particular layout. And this layout has assets for all the individual AppInstallAd items. In this case, we have an image view for the app icon. And this image view in the app icon is 40 by 40. It's near the top of the screen. Right next to that, we have our text view with the ID headline, and so that's where you see our app icon and the headline next to it, and right below that you see the rating bar. So this is exactly how we're laying out all of our ads, and all of these assets have IDs. And our view holders that I talked about before, this is where we actually pull out references to all of those specific assets that we define in XML. So if I look at our create method, which is down here, once we inflate this new view, this create method gets called, and it actually takes creates a view holder and sets the advertisement field to go find the advertisement ID from that layout, and sets the app icon. And so this view holder has references to every single view in this item app install ad. And so when it goes time to populate the list item, the populate list item method is actually what's doing all the work to set the image drawable and to set the text, to set the star rating, as well as making certain assets clickable down here. So the app icon, in this case, we have it to perform a click with the asset icon. The call to action, we have it perform a click with the call to action asset. And also, if attribution exists, so if we're coming from Backfill and the attribution icon and text is available, then we're setting it above, but we're also setting click listeners to again perform click with those attribution icon and text. So this is where the populate list item method is where all the magic is happening to actually populate that list item. So I'd like to make a few changes just to kind of motivate kind of how modular the app is. I do have an alternate layout for laying out the app install ad. It's got the exact same IDs for each of the individual assets, so that we can use the same app install view holder. The only change I'm going to make is in our ads listing adapter, instead of inflating that layout, we're going to inflate the alternate layout. Another thing I'm going to do that's different inside of my presentation is I'm going to make the image drawable animate. So in the populate list item, I'm going to go ahead and create a scale animation, which is just going to, over the course of 3 seconds, it's going to change the image size from 25% to 100%, and it's going to grow that image. And if I rerun this app, again, the listing adapter is going to inflate the alternate layout, and when it's populated, we're also going to see the image get bigger. So this was the content ad, so that's why it hasn't changed. But the app install ad has a completely different layout, and the image, kind of gets bigger over the course of the 3 seconds. So this layout is kind of different than what we saw in the previous example. But as you can see, all that I had to change was the layout of the image, and I got a completely different view of what it looks like in our app. And of course, the image kind of animation was just some extra sugar there. So as the publisher, you really do have complete control over how the creative is kind of displayed in your app. So that's all I have for the kind of practical example of how this would actually be used in the context of a list view. Some key takeaways from the publisher rendering. This rendering is done inside of the app. It is not done server side. So unfortunately, with this kind of approach, every layout change you might want to make would require a new release of your application. So you do want to be careful about how you're laying it out, and maybe if you're really sophisticated, you do have multiple layouts in there, and you kind of control that by maybe some server-side bit to your server to figure out which kind of presentation you could use if you wanted to do A/B testing. As the app developer, you're responsible of notifying the SDK of both impressions and clicks. If you do this incorrectly, of course, you'll get incorrect stats on the on the front end or as you're viewing the reporting. And if you do get enabled for backfill, which is a lot harder to get into because we need to kind of approve policy-wise, like your actual layout, to make sure that it fits a reasonable expectation of what the advertiser is trying to say with that creative, as well as we need to make sure you're doing recording impressions and clicks correctly, especially for backfill, because you're kind of affecting other advertisers other than your own reservations. If you are doing all that, then you will need policy approval, and we'll need to make sure you record impressions and clicks correctly. And then finally, also if you're doing backfill, you must display the attribution icon and text in the top right corner. These two fields will be null on the AppInstallAd and ContentAd objects if that ad is a reservation. If it's not coming from backfill, we won't populate those fields, and so you can just do a null check for those fields to decide if you need to display it. All right, the last thing I'd like to talk about is the native ads roadmap. So where are we going, and when are we going to get there? So you might be thinking that AppInstallAd and content ads are great, but I might have my own template where I might want to send a few extra parameters to my app, and how can I do that? So our answer to that is custom native templates. Custom native templates allow you to send arbitrary assets, any asset that you want to send, to your app to be rendered using the same client-side technique. These custom native templates are only going to work for direct sold reservations, because third parties don't really know how to bid on that specific type of format. But you can put app install, content, and custom templates all in one request. So if we go back to our ad loader that could previously load an app install ad and a content ad, you'll also be able to say that it's also for custom template number 1, and for this custom template with this other template ID. And you'll be able to actually request all of these at once and have all of these kind of bid against each other and compete for the same request. Also on the roadmap for a bit farther down the road is mixing native and non-native in the same request. So you can imagine that the ad loader supports app install and content ads, but why not, for banner ad and be able to get a banner ad using the same ad loader. So the ad loader technique is great because it's not locking you into a specific format, but all we have to do is kind of add new APIs and be able to handle requests through this ad loader, and we can give you back an ad view at the end of the day if you requested a banner and it loaded successfully. And then you can put that ad view into your app instead of getting the native assets to display in your app for a native ad. So that's kind of what's coming up on our roadmap. If you want to check out the native ads example, the second one that we did, the starting code base that we had, you can check out the goo.gl link shown above. And as far as getting access to native ads, it's in a private beta right now, but you can ask your account manager to kind of get enabled for native ads, and he'll help you get enabled, and then at that point we can share the native Addon Jar so that you can actually start making requests using the SDK. So that's all I have today. Thanks for watching, and good luck implementing native ads in your applications.